Hey y'all, I'm back and we're doing another video on moving. So in my last video, I shared with you how to do a move across country, doing like a DIY or like a self move, doing it yourself. This go round, I'm gonna share with you how to do a move across country and hire a moving company to do it for you. My hope is that with all the information I either shared in the last video or this video, it'll help you make the best informed decision for your move. Let's get into it. So, oh, and I have my handy dandy notes as always. So hopefully it helps me not forget anything and like not be too repetitive. But anyways, let's get into it. Okay. So back in 2014, I moved from Texas to New Jersey. I came here because I was going to grad school, and my original goal was to live in New York City because that's where I was going to be going to grad school, but things worked out a little bit different, and that's okay because same process. So what ended up happening is I got accepted to grad school, and I was living in Austin, Texas at the time. I still had time left on my lease in Austin that would have put me beyond the start date of graduate school. So the first thing that I had to do was sublet my apartment. Found someone to sublet my apartment, loaded up a moving truck, and moved my stuff from Austin, Texas to the Dallas, Texas area, which is where my mom had our family home at the time, and I just brought all my stuff there. When I brought my stuff to my mom's house, I went through all of my things. So I knew I couldn't take everything with me when I did the move. And because of that, it kind of boiled down to like a few things. One, I knew that I wasn't going to take a lot of furniture with me, if at all any, because I was living in a one-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas that was over 700 square feet. And I knew that I would be living in a much smaller apartment where it would probably be a studio. I would probably have roommates. So bringing furniture just like wasn't the best decision, not knowing where I was going, where I was going to end up type thing, because I hadn't found an apartment yet when it was time for me to come. I just decided to move here because at the time, trying to find things, and still to this day, because people will ask me about it, it's a little challenging to like find apartments and like not be on the ground and making sure you're not being scammed. So I just decided to wait until I came here to look for an apartment, which means I had to make some really like honest, like decisions before it was time for me to come. So I, was like, I'm not bringing any furniture. And then the other thing was, do I need it? And if I didn't need it, would I miss it the 2 years that I intended on being away for school? And if not, we were going to sell it. I sold my furniture using a few different platforms. So if this is something that you're thinking about doing, like selling some of your furniture before your move, Craigslist is always a good idea. You could try OfferUp is another good platform that I've used. Do Facebook Marketplace. That's so good. I haven't sold anything on Facebook Marketplace, but I've bought a bunch of stuff on Facebook Marketplace. And then check for Facebook groups in your area. So at the time, I ended up selling a lot of my furniture using local groups. So it would be like insert your city or Metroplex county name, and it was like a local buy sell trade type of group, and that is where I ended up selling a lot of my furniture. The beauty in that is the furniture that I sold, or like the books and things like that, clothing that I was able to sell, just meant that my pot for moving was a little bit larger, and I ended up using some of that money to like help cover my moving expenses. For clothes, if you're interested in like selling clothes, Macari is a good option for selling clothes, and Poshmark is another good option for selling clothes. And once again, just all of that money will go right into that pot for helping cover your moving costs. And I'll get into why too you might want to sell some of the things before you leave a little bit later. I'll cover that in just a moment. So preparing for the move, didn't know where I was going, hadn't had an apartment picked out. I was just gonna hit the ground running, so sold the furniture using a Facebook local group. And now I'm gonna get into like how to find a moving company, and then like how I ended up choosing the moving company that I chose. And I'm going to try to make this like as less repetitive as possible, but bear with me because like some of the repetition is very important because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So, how to find a moving company. Brace yourself because it could be quite the process. So you have a few different options when it comes to this. One, go on Facebook, because there's like a group for everything these days, and there are moving groups. Find one that is applicable for what it is you're trying to do. So like if it's like Texas to New York City move, or move across country, or move across the United States, like whatever the group is, go ahead and join that group. Hop in there and say, hey, you know, do you have any recommendations or referrals for a moving company from insert whatever state to whatever state or city, whatever, you get my point. And then you might also just be able, once you're added to the group, if it's private, just to search it, like search the group to see if someone has already asked that question before, and just see kind of what comes up. A lot of times what you find in some of those groups are people will name drop like the same company or service over and over again, and that could just be like a really good place to start. It also could be a good place because the next thing you're going to do is like check the reviews of companies. And you know, being in one of those groups, if someone had a bad experience, they're always sharing those kind of things too, so you can figure that out there. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So if you don't find a Facebook group that's applicable to like what you need, or you're not getting the help in the group, the next best thing to do is to go online. Now when you go online, you're going to 9 times out of 10 end up using a third-party kind of moving platform that is the equivalent of using like Priceline or Expedia for travel. And when you go on these sites, or you know, whatever the site is, they're going to ask you for your information. So they're going to ask you for like your phone number, email address, where you're moving from, where you're moving to, and kind of like a breakdown of the stuff that you will be taking with you or that you will need to be moved. Once you fill out all of that information, you're going to start getting a lot of emails. You're going to get tons of emails, and you're going to start getting tons of phone calls, and I do mean a lot. I know we live in a day and age where we don't like talking on the phone, but I promise you, you're going to get the best quote by talking to someone on the phone. But the emails can help you kind of whittle it down a little bit. So what I did when I was choosing my company, and this ties back into how to find a moving company, so I'm like toggling back and forth a little bit, but y'all will get where I'm going. So how I found my moving company is, once I went on that third-party platform, gave all my information, I was bombarded with telephone calls. Some companies will call you multiple times per day. You're going to get probably multiple emails from the same company. They're going to send you quotes. When you get those quotes, what you can do is go through your email and look through the quotes. You could check to see the price of it. Some of it I was able to just like eliminate once I kind of like looked at so many of the quotes and saw the various pricing. Like some of them were just so expensive. One, they were out of my budget, and two, I just knew I wouldn't be able to go, like I wouldn't be able to go with them because they were out of my budget. Like I just didn't have the money to be able to afford those things. And I was just like also curious why they were, not curious enough to call, but curious like why they were so expensive in comparison to other companies. So that helped me delete some of the quote, like some of the companies. So from that, I wrote down company names that I was interested in going with. Once I wrote down the names, I checked to see if they were accredited with a Better Business Bureau. I try not to ever do business with a company that's not accredited with the Better Business Bureau, just because if you end up having problems with them down the line, the BBB will hold them accountable, and you're normally able to like reach a resolution with that company versus if you go with a company that's not accredited with the Better Business Bureau, good luck, Charlie Brown. So if they weren't accredited with the Better Business Bureau, I instantly deleted them from my list. And then the next thing I checked was to see if the company was licensed and insured. This is very important, and you want to go with a company that's licensed and insured, because if something happens to your stuff along the way, they're responsible for covering it. It's some more stuff that goes into that, but bottom line, if something happens to your things, they're responsible for, you know, covering the loss of those items that you lost. Another good place you want to check you want to check reviews, which I mentioned a moment ago, but I'm gonna like break it down a little bit more. So if you get into some of those Facebook groups, people normally share, so type those names into the Facebook groups and see if like they pop up. You can also type the name of the companies into Google and put the word review after, so company name, then the word reviews. See what pops up that way, and then you can also check to see about reviews on Yelp. So once I got it down to say maybe like about 4 or 5 companies, that's when I was ready to get on a phone call, like start calling them, because there was no way I was calling all of those companies, and there was no need to call all of those companies, because like I said, why would I have called all of those companies when a quick little Google search showed me that certain ones weren't accredited with the Better Business Bureau? Like, I would have never given them my business anyways, no matter how cheap they were, which I didn't even end up going with the cheapest company for those reasons. Like, there's always a reason why a company, if the deal seems too good to be true, 9 times out of 10 it probably is. So just like do your due diligence on that. So I ended up calling the companies, and this is when I say you're always going to get the better quote when you call them, because even though some of those companies gave me a certain quote online, when I called and was able to talk to them, you know, I was able to like get the price down in some situations, because you just never know, like especially since like if they're just trying to, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I need to, if they're just needing to fill like a space on a truck, they may give you a discounted price because they'd rather have a full load than not have a full load. So if they're going from Texas to New Jersey anyways, and you know, you're interested in doing business with them, a lot of times they'll give you a cheaper rate because they'd rather have the truck at the fullest capacity as they can than just leaving empty space over a few $100. So always call them. So that's what I did. I called, and then that's how I was able to select the company that I decided to go with. And I'm going to break this down a little bit more in just a moment to help you further decide how to pick the company when I get into pro tips, because I got this email pulled up, and actually no, we'll do it now. And then if I have to cover anything in a moment, we will. So you want to make sure the company is licensed and insured. That is important, because if something happens to your things, they are responsible for covering the cost. But you need to read the fine print of the quote. Don't just read the top part that shows like, because it's always going to be broken down to look like an invoice. Don't just read the top part that has like the price. You need to get into the nitty gritty before you sign any contract or decide to go with any company, so you know the ins and outs of everything, and you know exactly what you're signing, so there's no surprises down the line. So, or down the road. So I made sure that there were no hidden costs. What do I mean by that? Make sure that things like fuel are included in the price. Make sure, and this is like, it's gonna sound so silly, but just like make sure you check. Things like fuel. Making sure that, let me see, and I'm just scrolling down through the email. Transportation charges, so mileage and tolls. I just said fuel a moment ago. All loading and unloading, all taxes. If they provide free blankets, is it free or is it going to be a hidden cost? And just wrapping for large furniture, or like mirrors, televisions, that kind of thing. whether or not they charge extra for a weekend pickup, and the rest of this I'm going to get into when I get into my pro tips. But just make sure that your confirmation, that your quote, the estimation that they gave you, know that those things are included so you're not subjected to hidden costs down the line. Okay, so we're going to circle back to this because this is key and it's so important. Okay, I was already in New Jersey, found my apartment, and then was calling moving companies from New Jersey to go pick up my stuff from my mother's home in Texas. One of the things I did before I left is I moved all of the stuff that I wanted to be brought here to me to be picked up by a moving company. I put it in, like, at the time my mom's home had a study. I put it inside of the study all together, and I took pictures of that, like from every angle. I took photos of like everything, but then I also took inventory of what it was I had. What do I mean by that? How many large cardboard boxes, how many small, medium cardboard boxes, full-length mirror, TV, what size it was, excuse me, if I had any of those Tupperware bins and what size those were. Just everything. Because the way that you're going to end up being charged is they're going to charge you kind of by like the weight of your stuff and how much space your stuff takes up on the truck. Because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a freight truck. They'll probably, I'll get back to that, how much space your stuff takes up on the truck. And that's the other reason why I was just like, let me go ahead and sell my furniture, because had I tried to bring all of this stuff, one, it wouldn't have fit in an apartment anyways, but two, it would have just made it be way outside of my budget. I wouldn't have been able to afford it because the furniture that I had was like house furniture. It was heavy, and if they're charging by the weight and the space, it just would have taken up too much space. It was just better for me to do what I needed to do once I got here. So take an inventory on all of your stuff. And I'm going to get into why it's also important once I get back into these pro tips in just a moment. So take an inventory of all your stuff, because they're going to ask you, and you're going to want to be as detailed as possible, because if they get to your location to pick the stuff up and it's heavier than what they thought it would be, or it ends up taking up much like more space, they're going to change how much they charge you or increase the cost of things. And it was helpful that when I was going over my list, my inventory list with them on the phone, I was also able to like email them photos of what my stuff looked like too, so they knew what the things looked like from that needed to be like brought here to me, because they could see it themselves. It wasn't just like me telling them and then they showed up and there were no surprises on either end. So take full inventory of all your stuff. So here is how the process is going to go down. So once you decide on the moving company, you're gonna have to like finalize some things to like get the ball actually rolling on things. So you're gonna get your contract, make sure there's no hidden costs, which like I said, I'm gonna get into that some more in just a moment, and review everything, make sure you read the details, because for example, with the company that I used, I had to put 20% down. So I signed the contract, I had to put 20% down, and then we scheduled a time. So I had found my apartment. I knew that I was going to be moving in on September 15th. So I wanted my things to be here on September 15th. They decided, or we were able to decide the pickup based off of them being the experts. Like, they knew they would go pick the stuff up from my mother's home and then do it whatever it was they did to then get it to me by September 15th. So that's how we were able to decide the day for pickup. And that's exactly what we did. So the day for pickup rolls around, they go to my mom's house, and then once they got to my mom's house, additional money, and I forget what the percent was due, but like additional money was due at that time, which I knew ahead of time. And my mom had the instructions, because that's the other thing, no shade, but like with some of our parents, make sure you set them up for success. So I had called my mom and sent it to her in text message, because you never know, like companies can be reputable companies and they still will try people, sometimes older people. So I always give my mom, just like as a general rule of thumb, I give my mom explicit instructions. And if they try to tell you anything outside of that, you call me before a decision is made. So I gave my mother explicit instructions on how much would need to be paid, you know, confirming, because she had to sign a piece of paper at pickup, like confirming this is all that it said, this is what the date should say, and that we're good to go. So my mom, you know, sent me, like, took a picture of it, what it was they needed her to sign, because that's the other thing, is like I try to make myself available for moments like that. She sent me a picture of it, I reviewed it, everything was good, she paid the money she was supposed to pay, and they loaded my stuff up. Now, what ends up happening is, when they go to your location to pick up your stuff, it's going to be like a regular moving truck 9 times out of 10. So they'll go to your home and pick your stuff up on a regular moving truck, because then what they're going to do is bring it to like their facility or their warehouse or wherever it is that they're going to store your stuff, until it's time for them to load up the freight truck to then have the freight truck on its way to you. So that's the other thing, is if you don't have a place to keep your things and you moved how I did, you can have them come pick your stuff up before you leave. Now, a lot of times they'll have a certain amount of days included in the cost that they quote you. So for example, the moving company that I moved with would have given me 30 days of free storage. Yeah, they would have given me 30 days of free storage. Not only that, but they also would have stopped at a second location within 10 miles to pick up additional things if I needed additional things to be picked up. So all of that would have been included in the price. So once again, if you don't have a place to live yet, and you don't have a place to keep your things at home, or someone to like navigate that for you back at home, you can have the moving company come and, you know, just check to see how long they'll store your stuff, because after the 30 days they will begin to charge you, and it just depends on, once again, the weight and how much space your stuff is taking up, because they're going to charge you for that. So they picked my stuff up, they held it wherever they held it until they got the, you know, the freight truck all loaded up, and then they were on their way here and brought my stuff here. Now, unfortunately, even with all the research that I did, I still ended up having problems with this moving company, to the point to where I had to threaten to sue them to get everything right. So immediately when they told me that my stuff was on its way, I knew I was going to have my stuff by the September 15th date. And that was really important to me, because one of the reasons I decided to go with this company, and I told them, I hope you're just not trying to sell me to get my business, is because I wanted my stuff by September 15th. At that point, I had been living out of a suitcase and kind of like house hopping, like staying with, you know, a few friends for these days, and I didn't have anything. So when I moved into my apartment, I like wanted the stuff that I wanted. And I know it sounds so first world, but at the end of the day, it was business. And in that transaction, I asked them, could they deliver by a certain date? And they said yes, and they accepted my business, and they did not get my stuff to me by that date. But by that time, they already had my things, and it was already on the road. So there was no going back. I just had to go the course and then deal with it accordingly. So my stuff got here, and I can't remember how many days. It might have been like supposed to get here on September 15th, and it didn't get here till like September 20th. And I know once again you're thinking no big deal, but this is business. And if I asked you specifically and you promised something and it was in my contract that you would have it to me by that date, you've then violated my contract. So my stuff got here like September 20th or something like that. And you know, the guys came, they unloaded my things, and it got weird because one of the movers was being like really friendly, and he was like low-key flirting, like, you're a pretty girl, like, you know, what brings you to New Jersey, and just asked me a bunch of questions, and I don't be answering all them questions because I seen the movie Taken, and it's none of your business. Like, why are you in my business? So the next thing that happened that was kind of like a second strike was a few days after they moved my stuff in, I get a text message from the guy, well, one of the guys, because it was two gentlemen who unloaded my stuff once it got to Jersey. I got a text message from him saying, I'm insert so-and-so, the guy who moved your stuff. You know, I would love to take you out on a date. I didn't give this man my phone number, which means he got my phone number off of like the slip, the moving slip from when they unloaded my stuff off the truck. Now, that made alarm bells go off with me because, one, I don't play about my safety. I wasn't like so concerned because I didn't answer any of his questions, and even though he knew where I lived, I was living in a high-rise building with 24-hour security and like concierge. So like that gave me a level of like security and protection. But I'm just like, if you did this to me, how many people do you do it to? So like immediately after my stuff wasn't delivered on September 15th, and then the thing happened with the gentleman texting my phone, I started recording most of the conversations that I had with this moving company. Now, I knew that I could do this because Texas is a one-party consent state. New Jersey is a one-party consent state. What does that mean? As long as one party who is part of the conversation on the phone consents to it being recording, you can record it. So since I was part of the conversation with the moving company and they were located in Texas and I was located in New Jersey, I could record the conversation without them having knowledge of it. And that's exactly what I started to do. So I started recording the phone calls. And like a third strike that happened is, and this happened before I even got the phone call, so really this should be second, and that should, or not the phone call, the text. This should be second and that should be third. So as soon as they like unloaded all of my stuff, I took inventory. And that's why, once again, that inventory checklist is so freaking important, because it allowed me to go through my stuff, and I realized some of my things were missing. So I called my mom and I asked my mom. Now, my mom, being the hard-headed person that she was, had decided that like my degrees she was keeping, like she wasn't going to send that with them. She decided to keep it last minute. That's fine. But there were other things that were missing, and she didn't have it. She had sent it with them. So I called the like moving company, like I called the people who had, you know, scheduled everything and told them like, hey, all my stuff wasn't dropped off. They got in contact with the driver and they were like, oh, he'll circle back to you in like a day or two and bring the stuff that was left on the truck. No problem. There was like a lamp that was broken that I brought to their attention, and I'll get into the lamp being broken in a moment. But then as I started unpacking my things over the days, I just noticed that a bunch of stuff was broken. And like, I've moved a lot, so I know you're probably thinking like, maybe you didn't pack the things right. I've moved a lot. So if it's one thing I know how to do, baby, I could pack down some glass, okay? So I'm opening up the boxes and it's just like crumbled glass, like mostly all my dishes, plates, those kind of things were just like broken. So I contacted the company at that point and I was just like, yeah, we're gonna have to do something. Now, mind you, I had started recording the conversations. I wasn't recording all of them because I wasn't always in a place to do this. So if my stuff was, say, delivered on September 20th, for over the course of a month, I was calling them like every morning. I was waking up calling them every morning because they weren't handling the situation. And the lady who so eagerly took my business was now like ducking my phone calls, saying I'd call you back, saying she had to like speak to management to figure out what they could do, da-da-da-da-da. And I've shared with them stuff about my stuff being broken. I shared about you violating my contract by my stuff not being delivered on the day you promised. That, like, I'm sharing all these things and like that, and I'm sharing that one of your drivers is texting my phone and like there's still not a level of concern or like care that's happening. So finally I let them know I've been recording these conversations and I'm going to pursue legal action. Like, you have left me no choice. Now, the next step that I did, because this had gone on for like a month, and I'm one of those people where you're just not gonna like drag things on me like that, because I didn't even at that point want a full refund. Like, I didn't. You did the service, right? But I wanted something off. Like, I deserved money off for those things. And that was part of her ducking and dodging me. So I told her I had been recording the conversations. You know, I threatened to pursue legal action. My next move, though, was, because the company was accredited with the Better Business Bureau, I wrote a review, or opened up a complaint. I'm sorry, I opened up a complaint with the Better Business Bureau, and I laid out everything. And if you ever find yourself in a position like this where you have to report a company, a business, to the Better Business Bureau, be as detailed as you can and leave your emotion out of it. They don't care that you were sad because your stuff didn't arrive on time. They didn't care that those was your favorite. They don't care about the emotional stuff. Stick to what is fact. The fact was, while I was emotional about my things not being delivered when they said they were going to be delivered, the fact was my contract said it should be delivered on that date. While I was sad about my dishes being broken, that was an emotion. My contract said that you should owe me money for what was broken, and they were not holding up their end of the contract. So when I opened up the Better Business Bureau complaint, the lady started calling me being like, you know, we'll work to get this like resolved with you. Just like give us some time to like figure it out. Now, here's where I did start dropping the ball, because it was like my first semester of grad school. I'm in the weeds of that. So like, let's say all of that happened like by the time I talked to them, it was like mid-October. November had rolled around, and then December had came, and I was like, y'all still ain't gave me no. So I started calling again, because I think at that point they thought, oh, we ain't heard from her in a while, she'll just go away. So I started calling again, and it kind of started back up the same process. And maybe, you know what, I don't think I told them then that now that I think about it, that I was recording the conversations and would pursue legal action. I don't think I told them that until I called in December. And I let them know that in December, I would be back at home in Texas, coming up on school break, and that I would be pursuing legal action because I had been recording the conversations. Y'all violated my contract, so on and so forth. So I get home, I still have like papers to finish. I'm like, once I get through that, you know, I'm gonna put my foot on neck. So I get home and I get a phone call, and I don't know who this gentleman was with the company. I don't know what his title was or what, but he calls my phone and he's like apologizing profusely for what happened to me, what's going on, you know, like for what went on. And he said, and I had a number in my mind that I was okay with them taking off of the price, which was, I think the total for the move ended up being like around, and I was trying to find my thing, but like $1,000 or something like that is how much it costs for them to move all of my things. I can't remember what my number was at that time that like I would have been okay with them taking off, but they offered me something way more substantial than what I was okay with. And I was like, I guess that will suffice. And I think they ended up giving me something like $300 or $400 off. And they were like, where would you like us to send that? Well, they were going to send a check. Where would you like us to send the check? I gave them where I wanted the check to be sent, and they sent the check, and it closed everything out. But had I not done my due diligence and like made sure my contract said what it needed to say, been recording those conversations so I had like detailed records, reported them to the Better Business Bureau because they were an accredited company, I would have been SOL. And this gets me into my pro tips, which is going to make me get back into some of the things you need to make sure aren't showing up as hidden costs or, you know, are included in your contract. And I feel like I'm forgetting something, but hopefully it comes back to me. My number one pro tip is get everything in writing. Read everything and get it in writing. So I've already shared some of the things to look out for. So like fuel, transportation, mileage, make sure all of that is included. Whether or not like a blanket and wrapping is included for your stuff. Whether or not they charge for weekend delivery. Here are some more things that you need to make sure that you are checking for. If you need to change the date of your pickup or your drop off, make sure you know what those fees look like, if any, will happen if you decide to do that down the line. Make sure you know how much stuff you have, a clear, accurate checklist or inventory of your things. Take photos because that's always helpful so they don't try to change the cost once they get there. Something else you need to consider, whether or not you're moving in a building that has stairs, because they will charge you per flight of stairs. So like the first flight will be free maybe, and then they'll charge you, for this company it would have been $75 per flight of stairs. Elevators, this company didn't charge for elevators, but also how far the apartment is from the elevator. So for this one, if it was more than 75 feet from the elevator, then you would have to pay for those kind of things. And then there's just like a laundry list of things that you need to make sure. Like if they store your things, how much will they charge you to store it? Is it free? How long do you get it for free? Once they start charging you, how much do they charge? And here is the thing about the company needing to be licensed and insured. Now, there's one cost. So say they get in a car accident, or, you know, the truck, they get in a car, like an accident moving your things in the truck, and they lose all of your things. Check to see how much their insurance will cover for property damage of total loss. Because you might be in a problem if your stuff is valued at one amount and you're only getting a certain level of money. So check that. The other thing you need to check is, so how like my lamp was broken or like some dishes were broken, how much money you get for broken items. Because they're not just gonna like replace the broken, so like if you got some expensive dishes, they're not just gonna like replace the expensive dishes that you lost or whatever. They're gonna pay you like a certain cent on the dollar. So make sure you're like reading your contract and you have a clear understanding of like what that all looks like before you decide to pick a company or sign your name on the dotted line. And that's why I say read through your contract, because it will be very long. And that's just making sure that there's no hidden costs. Like the cost that they tell you is what you're going to end up paying. If you're able to, record the conversation. If you live in a one-party consent state, your stuff is traveling to a one-party consent state. If you're doing business in one-party consent states, you are allowed to record the conversation and or just get things in writing. So if you hop on a call with the company and they tell you so and so and such, follow it up with an email. Per our conversation, I just wanted to make sure that my understanding while we were on the phone is clear, that you said, insert whatever they said, you know, please let me know if I may have missed anything, etc. so forth. Just get it in writing or record it, because this is what helped me not get taken advantage of and potentially like lose out, and how I was able to get money back. And the way that you can check, I forgot to mention this, whether or not a company is licensed and insured, there's a website. Well, if they're accredited with the Better Business Bureau, you could look on there and see. Companies may have it on their website, whether or not, and they should. I mean, if they are, they'll have it on their website, whether or not they are. But there's also a third-party site that you could use, and I'm just pulling it up. It is C as in Charlie, P as in Paul, U as in umbrella, C as in Charlie. So CPUC is a third-party company that you can use to see whether or not a company is licensed and insured. And then there's some other options, just like Google, how to check if a moving company is licensed and insured, and you'll find all the information that you're looking for right there. But like I said, just make sure you do your due diligence. Don't just be in such a rush to like do it that you end up like messing up, because it's really expensive. These are your like valuables, and you just want to make sure things are done right. I hope I didn't miss anything. I don't think I missed anything. But if you have any questions, please, please, please feel free to drop them down in the comments. If you haven't done so already, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And the next video that I have coming up, we're going to be doing short haul moves or short distance moves within a state or across the metroplex within a state. Both for if you want to do a self move or if you want to hire a moving company. All right, bye y'all. Enjoy the rest of your day.